Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes a pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's fact. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the Last Round Podcast in a busy week of events, especially over here on the West Coast. We had the, we have the Ryan Garcia press conference was this week in LA, Canelo press conference this week in San Diego. Obviously, we had the Tyson Fury, Whyte. Actually, Whyte wasn't even there, but Tyson Fury, their kickoff press conference. In London to announce their fight. And then you got the Matchroom, the zone card for Chocolatito Gonzalez and Julio Cesar Martinez this upcoming Saturday, which we'll touch on a little bit later. Busy week of fights, and we appreciate you listening for us to catch you up on everything that is happening, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Boxing Social, wherever you're at, however you're listening. We appreciate it. Jumping right into it. Maybe the most controversial matchup of the year so far could be, when we do another show at the end of the year in December, it could be it still could stand the test of time and be the most controversial matchup of the year. But you never know. Boxing changes so much in a year's time. Josh Taylor remains undefeated and retains his undisputed lightweight world, super lightweight world titles, or actually junior welterweight. You know what? They have all these names. I'm just going to stick with junior welterweight as he gets the split decision over Jack Catterall. Obviously, there's a big deal. There's a big issue going on behind this decision. As from what I've seen, I watched the fight too, and I did score it for Jack Catterall. I do believe that he actually deserved the win. And from what I've seen and from what you've seen, Mike, it looks like a lot of other people believe that he should be the new 140-pound undisputed champion. But this fight was in Scotland. It was kind of like a homecoming fight for Josh Taylor after getting all these titles against Jose Ramirez last year, I believe. Are you surprised? First off, before if you answer that, how did you score the fight? And people throw the word robbery around. Was this a robbery?
I personally scored the fight 8-4 in favor of Jack Catterall. I would have said, yeah, probably in terms of a robbery, yes, because most people only gave Josh Taylor like 3 or 4 rounds. Pretty much every single person I spoke to had Jack Catterall winning, apart from obviously Josh Taylor's team. They're the only people that seem to think that, Josh won it. I mean, when it's a close fight, you kind of like not understand, but I think we kind of accept that quite often they just go in favor of the home fighter because they're the A side and they're the money. Rightly or wrongly, it tends to be the case. But when it's that, when you're looking at like 8 rounds to 4, 9 rounds to 3, most people had it. Yes, I think it has to be a robbery, and I think it's bad for the sport. My little brother, like he watches more UFC than he does boxing, and he said to me, he's like, "Why does that always happen? Like, why you see that like all the time in boxing? You don't really see that as much in the UFC." And I was like, I don't know. It just tends to be how it is. It's just one of those things, I guess. And hopefully now that it's happened on such a big stage. And you have, podcasts like the Fight Disciples, campaigning for something to actually happen. Even, the commentators on TV, Ben Shalom, who was, essentially the promoter for the event, they've all said that they want an investigation. They want something done. Hopefully enough pressure is put onto Robert Smith, who's the head of the British Board of Boxing, that, he eventually does something. Because, is it just bad judging? Is it corruption? Is it just, the judges favoring the A side, thinking that that's what they're supposed to do because that's where the money comes from? Is it they're just favoring whoever the money fighter is, whoever they think is going to bring the most money into the sport, into their promotion? what is it? Is it brown envelopes? Is that what's going on? I don't think we're ever going to officially find out, but something needs to be done.
Right. And obviously you're not the only one that's been sharing those sentiments since it happened this past weekend, this past Saturday, actually. I'm surprised. I was actually surprised when I saw the British Board of Boxing Control essentially announced that they were going to open a type of an investigation into this and kind of look into the matter and see what happens. But, do you think...
They said that before, though. Remember when Bradley Skeet?
Well, exactly. That's what I'm getting to. Like, is this more of like a public relations thing? Like, okay, well, let's just announce this to say we're going to look into it, and we'll look into it and all that, just so we don't look like the bad guy. But we're not going to overturn it. But we need to do something to kind of calm down the herd, because if we don't, then we're going to keep getting more backlash, and it's going to get more lethal and more powerful. And we need to, because they are a public agency over there, they're a government agency, funded by the people, essentially the taxpayers. I mean, I'm assuming that's how it works over there as well. They have to do something from a PR standpoint. So are they going to actually do anything, or what do you think? Or is when they come back from the other side of this investigation, and I say investigation in air quotes here, is it going to be the same decision that was already made?
The problem is it's like anything in it. It's when you get a business investigating their own business, are they going to do anything? And I think it's one of those things when normally when it happens like the Bradley Skeet situation, by the time the next weekend comes, us as boxing fans were onto something else.
Exactly.
Something else has happened, and it's yesterday's news. It's out with the trash.
Exactly.
And I'm hoping this time round, and I think it's going to be different, especially like I touched on, the guys over at the Fight Disciples who are obviously, they're big in the game. They work on TV, they have a lot of listeners, a lot of pull. I don't think they're going to let it lie.
Especially with Daniel Kinahan, they got a statement for him today. That was crazy.
Exactly, right. And I don't think that they're going to let it lie. And I think that's something that's probably going to be good for the sport. And I think, come next weekend, it's still going to be here, until they actually do something, until, Robert Smith comes out and says, this is what we've done. We're going to start, whether it's, retraining people, getting a younger group of people that are coming through. I honestly don't really know, and many other ideas, whether there's the increase to like 5 judges so they can water down the bad ones. I don't know. I mean, hopefully they can come up with some, good ideas for what to do, whether it's, the fact that they were in, so close to the ring, but that, they're kind of put off by the Scottish fans. Because I'm sure like every time, Josh Taylor threw a jab and whether it landed or not, I'm sure the Scottish crowd, were cheering, and whether that put them off. I know they're supposed to be professional, and they something like that shouldn't affect them, but maybe it does. Maybe it does affect them, and then maybe that's why they all came up with these ludicrous scorecards. Hopefully, something can be done, and I'm hoping that this time around, it's not going to disappear come this coming weekend.
Going back to the actual fight, when I watched it, and I know I wrote this down, I had round 2 was close, at least to me. That was a close round. Maybe I'm wrong because I haven't really seen this, but I felt like round 9 was also close. I know a lot of people said that Taylor. I've seen some opinions out there that said, okay, Jack Catterall controlled the first half of the fight, but he let Josh Taylor kind of step on the gas a little bit more in the second half of the fight, so he didn't close it out. He didn't close it out strong, essentially. But I don't agree with that. I don't think Taylor essentially closed out the fight in the second half. I think he had a better second half than a first half, but I don't think he necessarily black and white closed it out, and that's what got him the split decision essentially. I think Jack Catterall had already built, especially by the 9th round. I think Jack Catterall already had built a pretty sizable lead, but then we got the point deductions in back-to-back rounds, and I think the one Josh Taylor got was right at the end of the round, like right after the bell rang, as he was going back to his corner, I think the ref took a point away. And I was watching it. I was like, because I watched the replay. I saw everybody's like, opinions and outrage about the decision. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm definitely going to watch it. And so I watched it, and I thought, oh, okay, he took a point away from both of them. Let me see. And the Taylor one, really, he took it away when he was going back to his corner. He pulls it back, and I was like, what? So, I mean, do you think in that regards, this is how I thought about it. Do you think that obviously the referee, I agree with the general consensus that, he was stepping in too much. He was just too involved. Like, it was just too much. There was a lot of hugging. There was, but the referee was just, there was moments where, I mean, if you think about it, how many seconds or time in total did he take away from that fight because he stepped in or he had to break him apart, or, because there was times where they were trying to fight out of it, especially Josh Taylor. He seems like he likes to fight on the inside. But do you think that Jack Catterall had the point deduction first, I believe, in the 10th round, and then at the end of the 11th is when Taylor had it taken away? Do you think the referee, maybe in the back of his mind, and I'm not saying yes or no, I'm just posing the question, do you think he thought, oh, okay, well, I should take it away from Taylor too, to kind of make this a little bit even? Because I know if I just leave it where that I deducted a point from Jack Catterall, they're gonna definitely come after me and say, oh, I was in Josh Taylor's pocket, I was in Top Rank, and I was in their pocket. Do you think that's viable?
I could kind of see why you did it. The referee did get involved a bit, but I remember watching it and I'm thinking, geez, man, these guys are good when they're not hugging. But it was kind of like a Jack Catterall game plan, I think, when they were up close, because Taylor's pretty good on the inside. I think he'd been told, like, hey, just hug him so he can't hit you. And then obviously, let the referee break it up and then get back to your work, because he was killing him with the jab. And then, I can kind of understand, because at times I was like, Jesus, they're hugging again. Like,
yeah,
just stop it, And then eventually, like, the referee told them and then took a point. So I was like, okay, that's kind of fair enough. And then I could see, Josh Taylor kind of like punched him in the gut on the way back to the ring. And I'm sure I saw the interview where Josh was like, oh, yeah, I was just, saying good fight to him. And I'm like, no, you weren't, dude. You knew what he was doing. Like, you're right. You're right. I don't know if that was the same moment that I popped into my head when you mentioned that, but there was a point where they were like together, and I think the ref kind of pulled them apart. He stepped in to pull them apart, and Josh Taylor kind of gave, like, it was a punch. It was a punch straight. It was into his lower back. I don't know if you remember that. It was like one of the middle rounds, but I remember watching that, and I rewinded it. I was like, did he really just punch him on the break on his lower back? And he did. And it wasn't like it wasn't like a tap. Because he took the point, didn't he? It was at the 11th where, like, they were walking back to the corner, and he, like, punched him in the stomach.
Right.
And then he was at the end of the fight. He was like, oh no, I was just kind of like tapping him, saying, good fight, and don't put yourself in that situation. If you want to say good fight to him, put your hand out and punch, tap gloves.
Right.
I'm sure he did it on purpose, just to try to be a bit of a dick or wind him up or something like that. But don't put yourself in that situation, and you won't get a point deducted. So that's one way to look at it, right?
I mean, think about it. Taylor's already maintained after this fight that he's not going to be at 140 anymore. He's like, oh no, I'm done. My days at 140 are done. I'm going up to 147. He's like, I'll fight Jack Catterall again. I'll give him a rematch, but it's going to have to be at welterweight. I mean, that's not going to happen. I mean, it could happen. Jack Catterall might be like, okay, I'll fight you out. Who knows? Maybe crazier things have happened, but I think we're both in agreement that there should be a new 140-pound undisputed world champion right now. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I saw that Josh Taylor, after having a couple days or a day or so to reflect, I think he watched it. I think he kind of acknowledged that maybe, this fight was closer than I thought. Am I wrong, or did I see something about that?
He said the fight was close, but he still thinks he won it. That's
okay.
That's what he posted on, Instagram. I think he said something that he thought that he had the more powerful, more meaningful shots. Obviously, right. I think he admitted that Jack Catterall outpunched him, but he thinks that he had the more, clinical, shots which is wrong because I think in a couple of the later rounds, which I think a couple of them he actually won on the judges' scorecards, he landed 3 punches. So that just kind of goes to show how crazy some of the scorecards were.
You touching on the landed punches and all that. Because I had texted it to you after, because Sky Sports has their own like punch counting that they do, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it looks like CompuBox was retained by maybe ESPN and Top Rank for the U.S. broadcast, seemingly. And I know it happens, but I like the discrepancy between both of the punch stats was it was kind of large. I think I sent it to you. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, you did. You sent it to me. It should be on there.
Let me look. But I remember I was looking through Twitter and all that, and then I saw the punch stats for Sky Sports, and then I saw the punch stats for CompuBox, and I was like, oh, okay. I mean, like they were pretty like Catterall still was, landed the heavier or landed the more shots and all that. So from a general standpoint, they kind of lined up, but like it was still very different. Okay, here I found it. So the Sky Sports punch stats, Josh Taylor threw 255 and landed 85 for a percentage of 33%. Jack Catterall threw 357 total punches and landed 166, 20 away from almost 100 more punches than Josh Taylor. And that was of a success rate of 46%. So from a fight total, Taylor landed 33% of his shots. Catterall landed 46% of his shots. And CompuBox had that Josh Taylor landed 73 punches out of 306 for a percentage of 24%. And Jack Catterall landed 120 of 525 for 23%. That's strange, isn't it? Because Sky Sports said that Jack Catterall threw 357. CompuBox says he's threw 525, almost 200 more punches. Josh Taylor on the Sky Sports one, like I just mentioned, threw 255. CompuBox says he threw 306. That one maybe I could work with, but the Jack Catterall one, there's like a 200 punch difference in terms of thrown. So I mean, like I know it's difficult, I know it's difficult to these are actual people, at least on the CompuBox side. These are actual people just counting the punches and pushing the button and watching. It's there's a margin of error here. We understand that, but that's a big discrepancy. Who's right here? Like that. Who are we supposed to like really look at? Because there's a lot of people. I mean, how many years have people said, oh, so-and-so landed more punches, he should have won, or like, oh, so-and-so has a higher connect percentage or something, or they talk about, Floyd Mayweather, like, oh, he's had the highest, percentage of connected shots in his career and history and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, I'm sure he has, like, if you just watch him, you can acknowledge that. But when you see something like this, essentially 2 different punch counting options, and they're getting different, I guess, figures, and certain numbers are very, very, the difference is large. I mean, who do we trust here? Or who are we supposed to put our confidence in? Because that's the one I was looking at. CompuBox says that Catterall, that's the big one for me, that he threw 525, and then Sky Sports that puts that he threw 357. Almost, I mean, that's almost a 200 punch difference. Like that's a lot of punches. So I don't know. I just think that's strange. And I know it's like happened before, because sometimes, both counting options are utilized, but I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely odd. I don't know whether Sky Sports use. We'll have to ask, like Andy Clark or something next time we have him on the show. Do they use a computer system? Do they use a man in the crowd like CompuBox? So it's something to note down. I think next time we get Andy on.
Like I think we should try to look into a show, see if we can coordinate it with somebody from Sky Sports. Like if we can get somebody who works in their punch counting team, that'd be great. Because then we can get somebody from CompuBox, like Dan Canobio. He's been on the show a couple times, and one of the episodes might have been the first one. He kind of breaks down how the punch counting happens, how they're, how the whole machine works over there. And if we have both of them on, I think it'd be a very, very interesting conversation for us to talk about that, especially two people who are kind of in the same business, if that makes sense. I mean, what do you think?
No, definitely. I mean, that's something I'm sure we could do. I'm sure like either Andy Clark knows someone that we could get, or he knows the system himself. So two kind of regular guests, I guess.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. We should definitely look into that. But yeah, I think we definitely agree that Jack Catterall should be the new 140-pound undisputed champion. Taylor says he's moving up to 147. So all those belts are just going to go flying. So the WBA is going to go towards PBC, I'm assuming. Is this when all the belts go to the respective corners of the sanctioning bodies and promoter relationships? Is this when it happens?
Yeah, I would imagine so. I think we'll see Jack Catterall will get a shot for the WBO. I'm sure after his performance and public demand, he'll get the shot at the WBO title. The WBA will probably go to like Matchroom or PBC. IBF doesn't really have a promotional home, I don't think. WBC kind of floats between anyone, really. The one with the biggest money. So, yeah, I'm sure that'll pop up. WBC, maybe go to what? Teofimo Lopez?
Maybe. I could see Top Rank trying very, very hard to either get the WBC or the WBO. They're probably going to go for the WBC, and they're going to sanction Jose Ramirez. If Jose Ramirez wins against Pedraza, they're going to set up Lopez Ramirez for the WBC 140. They're going to really try hard for that.
Yeah, I could see that.
But, hopefully everybody enjoyed while it lasted, the whole undisputed reign that Josh Taylor had, and then the matchup with him and Jose Ramirez, and this last matchup against Jack Catterall, because like we just said, all the belts are going to kind of go their respective corners, and it's going to be I'm assuming a couple years before we see another undisputed champion at 140 pounds.
Does Taylor go the Crawford route?
No, I don't think Crawford's going to give. Well, you know what? I take that back. If PBC really boxes him out, I don't think they will, because when Spence and Ugas fight, which they have a press conference this week too. I'm telling you, everything's happening this week. If Spence beats Ugas, especially if Spence beats Ugas, Spence has already said, yeah, we're going to fight, but Al Heyman and PBC are letting Spence essentially get more credibility and stock under his name and getting all these belts. So obviously he's the A side, but it just gives him more power in the negotiations. And, it gives PBC and Al Heyman more chances to make money in-house to fighting fighters within their team, like Ugas, Spence, Garcia, Spence, Sean Porter, Errol Spence. But if for some reason Spence wins, or Ugas wins for that matter, and he doesn't want to fight, or they really box out Crawford at the end of this year, or what have you, I mean, Crawford's not really. I mean, who else is on the table? Virgil Ortiz. Virgil Ortiz might be the likely option. I think Golden Boy would be like, yeah, go for it. You need it. You work this hard. It's time. Or Josh Taylor. I mean, who else outside of the PBC is he going to fight? Like there's Boots Ennis is there, but I know Boots Ennis essentially is a free agent, but is he really? Because he fights all his fights on PBC.
I think he's like signed to like Showtime, right?
Yeah. So like I kind of
So PBC.
essentially.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know people say, oh, he's a free agent or something, but not really. You know, he might be in a certain aspect, but we know where he's fighting. You know, he knows where all the names are at. They're on the PBC, Showtime, Fox side. Or does Crawford fight Keith Thurman? You know, Keith Thurman's coming off a win. You know, Crawford beats Thurman, but it's another name. But it's either going to be, if he gets boxed out after the Spence Ugas fight, it's either my guess is it's Virgil Ortiz number 1. If Ortiz wins his fight this month. Who else am I missing? Who did I just mention? I already forgot.
You got all the PBC guys?
No. I'm talking about the guys outside. Josh Taylor. Okay, so Virgil Ortiz, Josh Taylor, and Connor Ben, maybe. You know?
Kell Brook.
No, he's not going to fight Kell Brook again. He already... that's not going to happen. But Crawford already said he might move up to 154.
Yeah.
But does he really think he'll get a Charlo fight at 154?
From what he says, he's going to go to the biggest offer. And I just do wonder at times, does he need to kind of like lower his demands just to get some of those fights for us? You know, we all know that he's good and he's shown that he's good, but he just needs the names on his resume to cement that. Because if he retires now, I think even he would be disappointed about not getting some of the biggest challenges. I'm sure he's made a lot of money and he seems fairly sensible in, you know, what he spends. So now's the time maybe just to do the legacy fight, you know, just do the legacy ones.
Right. No, yeah, you're right. I think he's to the point where he's made enough money. Yeah. He's made a lot of money and he's lucked out because he was on the other side of the street with Top Rank and all the PBC guys were making all this money. They're still making all this money. So Bob Arum and Top Rank, like, okay, well, we have to pay him, you know, because if his contract runs out, he's going to leave. So we have to pay him essentially more than he's worth. That's how they framed it. You know, that's why Bob Arum came out after they separated, their relationship severed, and said, I lost money on every one of his fights. Like, that's why he came out and said that. And then even Eddie Hearn, they asked him if he wanted to work with Crawford, and he said, yeah, I love to work with Crawford, but, you know, he said something along the lines of like, you know, but he has to, you know, if he has to be realistic on his pay, you know, pretty much kind of.
He's not a draw.
Yeah, that's what Eddie Hearn was also saying. Like, you know, people are upset about it, but like, that's kind of like, if you look at the pay-per-view model and stuff like that, and you know, name recognition, that's kind of there, you know, whether people like it or not. He's a great fighter. He's an excellent fighter. Arguably the number 2 pound for pound behind Canelo. You know, if you don't have Canelo as your number 1, I don't know what to tell you, but Crawford's arguably number 2, and he's been in the top 3 or 4 for years. But I mean, we'll see. But honestly, I think he fights Ortiz. Do you think he fights Virgil Ortiz, Taylor, or Spence first?
Taylor.
You think he fights Taylor? See, I don't see Taylor at the top of the list. It's because Taylor's associated with Top Rank, and he's got a lawsuit against them. I don't see it.
Good point. I don't see the Spence fight happening because the only way that they would do it, I think, is the PBC would want him. They'd wanted to tie him down for 2 or 3 fights, and unless the money, you know, is great, you know, and he's getting like 20 million for 3 fights or something like that, I don't see Crawford doing it. Virgil Ortiz probably not, because I'm sure Golden Boy want to try to keep him wrapped in cotton wool until.
I don't think they want to. I think after this fight, especially if he, I mean, like, De La Hoya is always always seemed like the type of guy like he's gonna throw you into the wolves. Like, okay, when he knows you're at that point. After this fight,
he does it with some people, but he doesn't do it with others because he doesn't do it with Ryan.
I know, but like he's
a cash cow, so that's why he's wrapped.
That's different. That's different. Like he has no more Canelo, and he knows that Ryan is his closest thing to that point right now, which I understand. And if you look at it from a boxing standpoint, Ryan's after his win against Luke Campbell, he had so much momentum, but like we touched on before, he didn't. He had some struggles subsequently to that, so it kind of took away from his momentum. But if he comes back in his next fight that was announced this week, knocks him out, gets the momentum back, gets a bigger fight later this year. Who knows? He's still really young. Obviously, kind of going on a tangent with him, but see, I think Ortiz after this fight, especially if he wins, and especially if he wins like by knockout, how pretty much how he's been doing, I think Golden Boy and Oscar De La Hoya try as hard as they can to make a Crawford fight. I think they try as hard as they can to make a Crawford fight. And if they don't, do they put him against in there like another Conor Ben or something like that?
Do you know what? In a weird way now, you've kind of convinced me, because if you look at the Josh Taylor Crawford in terms of combined purses, that's going to be high. If you look at Errol Spence Crawford combined purses, that's going to be nearly impossible to put both of their purses together and actually get any money back.
Right.
In terms of pay-per-view, they both draw, but they don't draw 12 to 15 million.
No.
So Virgil Ortiz, in terms of, I could see that.
I can see Virgil.
No one's gonna want to fight Virgil. So you might have convinced me actually.
Exactly.
If Oscar wants to do it and he's not scared to push people, it gives Virgil maybe his only chance really of getting a title shot, because the PBC's on the other side. Yeah.
It's a crazy little round robin there, but
because you have to think about all that, like combined purses, getting stuff back, wrong side of the street. It's ridiculous, but it's true.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but let's see how it goes. It's going to be interesting to see. But Josh Taylor's already said, as we mentioned, going back to our original point, Josh Taylor said he's moving up. So it's likely Jack Catterall gets a shot at the vacant WBO title maybe later this year.
One thing I wanted to throw at you before we move on from that. You think Josh Taylor's got worse since he's gone to Ben Davidson, sorry.
Going off of this fight, I think he's regressed. I wouldn't use the word worse, but I think he has regressed from his fight against Jose Ramirez. See, that's another thing. I'm glad you brought that up. That's another thing that's just kind of like,
well, he was with Shane McGuigan, wasn't he, for the Regis Progress fight, and then he fought that the Asian guy that he smoked in around, Jose Ramirez, and obviously Jack Catterall under Ben Davidson.
Right. I think it's more like, and I don't know, maybe Jack Catterall was just, do you think he underestimated Jack Catterall? I think he kind of did. If I'm have to speculate here, I think Taylor, he trained so hard for the Ramirez fight. It was an undisputed fight. It was a big fight in Vegas. He trained so hard and he fought so well, and really, made his stamp at that division and became the man at 140 pounds. So I think when he got the titles, he's like, oh, okay, I'm on top of the world. I don't want to compare him necessarily to Teofimo Lopez when Teofimo Lopez got all his belts at 135, but kind of in that same general direction, where maybe it got to his head. Like he's like, oh yeah, I'm the best at 140, which he essentially is, but we've seen it before and we're always going to keep seeing as long as boxing is alive, which it's always going to be alive. But you see these fighters who make it to the top of the mountain, and it's harder to stay at the top of the mountain than it is to get there. I mean, like that's when you bring guys in like Canelo or Floyd Mayweather as like prime examples. Those guys got to the top of the mountain and they stayed there. They stay there. And Canelo, current times, he stays there. He trains extremely hard for each fight. He doesn't care who he's fighting, and he goes in there and look at his last like 5 or 6 fights since the Triple G fights. he's gotten better every single fight. He's gotten better every single fight. You can visually see it. And that takes extreme discipline. That takes extreme discipline and dedication. And I know, going back to Floyd Mayweather, people would say, oh, he says this hard work, dedication. It's just he just says it just for TV and marketing. That's how he worked. That's true. That's exactly what he did. Even now, you look at him now, and he still looks the same. He still looks like he can jump in there and fight. So, I think there is some truth to that. If I have to speculate that, maybe Taylor's like, oh, I'm undisputed, and he kind of overlooked Catterall to an extent, because a lot of people did. Everyone essentially overlooked Catterall, like, oh, he's gonna beat him, and then, he'll move up to fight Crawford, or maybe he'll fight Teofimo Lopez at 140, or what have you. Maybe another rematch with Jose Ramirez. So, and then if the fighters are reading the media reports all the time, maybe he got caught up in the reports, and the boxing narrative. Oh, everybody's overlooking him, so he's probably not that good. Is it that? Or was Catterall just that good? And he knew he was able to neutralize a lot of Taylor's strong points, So we'll see. But I think in the next 3 or 4 months, Taylor vacates, and it's a round robin for all those fights. Moving on. Robesi, how did we say the name last week? Robeisy. Damn it, I forgot again. Robeisy Ramirez gets the 3rd round TKO over Eric Donovan. What'd you think about Ramirez's win?
He's looking better, slowly but surely. I think he's coming through what everyone said he was going to be. Obviously, when he signed with the Top Rank, everyone was kind of going crazy about him due to his amateur experience, 2-time Olympic gold medalist. And then obviously on his debut, he loses. So obviously he changes camp. I think he's with Ismail Salas still. And slowly but surely, I think we're starting to see what everyone was talking about. Obviously, just a bit of a hard transition from the amateurs to the pros for him at the beginning.
I feel like, how long have we been talking about Robeisy Ramirez? I feel
it's been a few years now, before COVID.
Okay, that's what was coming to my mind. I was like, I feel like that's a name that we've seen a lot, at least in our episodes every week. I know he's only 9-1, but I don't know why I feel like we've been talking about him since we started this show. Maybe it's just one of those names. Maybe it's just one of those names. I don't know.
I think it's just local to us, isn't he? He's local to Top Rank, and we probably just see him more often.
That's probably what it is. I think sometimes that we're guilty of that little bias in that regard. Also on the card, Nick Campbell gets the 7th round TKO over Jay McFarlane. This was for the vacant Scottish area. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that title. Scottish area heavyweight title. What'd you think about Campbell's performance?
One of the worst fights I've ever seen on TV. But
whoa.
Still fun. It was still fun. I don't know why. It was just one of those ones where I was like, the quality in terms of technique and stuff, the cardiovascular, how much they could last and how many punches were thrown, atrocious. And I loved it. I thought it was just funny. It was funny to watch.
Let me pose you a question now that you say that. Would you rather see, if you were at an arena watching fights, would you rather see 7, let's just say, 6 out of 7 really worse fights, really boring, and then the last one is a classic, like the main event? Or would you rather see all 7 be really worse, but they're entertaining like this one?
Oh, I don't know. That is hard because we used to go to loads of fights, and when they're boring, it's hard. Because you're there for most of the day. So I would probably go with the fact that the amount of fights I attend, I would rather they were all fairly good to watch, because you do find you start getting tired, you start yawning, because you know what it's like if you go to the beginning of some cards.
It's a long day, yeah.
Like PBC do 15, 16 fights.
Yeah, it's a long day, yeah.
Yeah, and I like to be there for all of them because you never know who you're going to miss coming up.
No, right, yeah. It's a long day. That's what people don't like. Some people don't realize, like, when we show up, like most of the time we'll show up like from the beginning, and it's a long day. There's a lot of fights going on that happen way before TV even starts.
Not throwing some media under the bus, but half of them turn up for the main event.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
And
That happens a lot. I've been guilty of that. Where I've shown, well, not like right before the main event, but like I've shown up for like the TV portion. But I do see people that happens a lot too. They show up right before the main event. I mean, that's where that's what people are tuning in for, essentially. So, moving on. Also, this past weekend in an upset, maybe so far the upset of the year. Let's see if it sustains that title from the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas, Nevada. Hector Luis Garcia gets the upset victory, unanimous decision win over Chris Colbert, who takes the first loss of his career. Is this a case like we just talked about Taylor-Catterall? Is this a case where maybe Colbert underestimated him, or was Garcia just that good?
We said it last week. When you get these foreign fighters like Hector Garcia and also the one we're going to talk about right after this, Fernando Martinez, they've been doing it for the last year or last 2 years on matchroom shows. You don't know who they are. They turn up and you probably underestimate them, or their record looks padded, but they want it. They want it so bad because of where they've come from that they come in there and this is their World Cup final, or this is their Super Bowl for our American fans that are listening. This is their Super Bowl. So they put it all on the line. Chris Colbert probably dropped it a little bit because he's thinking like, I'm going to mess this guy up. Don't know who he is. I'm going to be far too good for him. And then Hector Garcia gets in there and, just runs riot, doesn't he, really? At the end of the day, I mean, he was 11-1 underdog. He dominated the whole fight. I think it was 118, 109.
Right.
2 scorecards and then 119, 108.
Right.
Yeah. Great. Chris Colbert has obviously looked really good coming up. Obviously, he was the star of that Netflix documentary series. Obviously, had a lot of backing behind him. And I think he must have just underestimated him. It's hard to see because this is the only time we've seen Hector Luis Garcia. So, he may go on to bigger and better things. And maybe this was just his, breakout performance. And he'll go on to, be one of the stars of the division.
And it's not like it was a close, like split decision. No. Or unanimous decision. He blew him out of the water. The scores were 118, 109 twice and 119, 108. That was a shutout. He shut him out. It wasn't like it was even close. Like it was like a close majority decision or, a close unanimous decision. He shut him out.
The body work was just money in the bank all night.
Oh yeah. When he was doing that and he kept doing it as the rounds progressed, I was like, oh man, he really found his spots. He found his spots. He just kept going after that body.
Good on him. 30 years old, kind of. He was a last minute opponent. He's just bought himself hopefully some big paydays and hopefully some life changing money for him.
But do you think if they do a rematch, which they might, Colbert Showtime might want to run it back? Now that Colbert knows who he's training for, because we know this. Sometimes the last minute opponent, it's very dangerous because you don't know. Like you trained for one style, and then you don't want to lose the event because there's so much money behind it and logistics. That we have this replacement opponent, and you're like, okay, well, throw him in there with him. I'll still beat him, but essentially he's an unknown. But do you think if they have a rematch and Colbert knows what he's training for this time, do you think it's a different outcome?
Yeah, I would say so. Garcia was obviously known in the amateur ranks. He was an Olympian for the Dominican Republic in 2016. So he was known if you're a big amateur fan. But in terms of pro ranks, he hadn't done a lot. He turned pro very late. But yeah, I think, if I was Colbert, you'd want to run it back. You want to run it back. Colbert wants to be a world champion. He's got some, good amateur pedigree himself. Get in there and do it again. Get rid of that. This could be his blemish, but also Hector Garcia could be his bogeyman. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he might run it back again, and Garcia might mop him up again because it wasn't close, like you said. So maybe Colbert's, this guy's just not for me. Let's just go and we'll live to fight another day.
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes that happens where people are like, you know what, this I don't want to fight this guy anymore. I know he's just too much for me. I'm gonna just keep moving on. What's the biggest, most famous example of a boogeyman like that, where somebody, maybe they fought. There was multiple fights, like a trilogy or like a,
one that
they
probably
fought
didn't go the way it should have done. Pacquiao and Marquez, because Marquez should have won more of those.
Yeah, but they were all entertaining fights. They were all great.
No, they were, but that was kind of like a boogeyman for Pacquiao, because Marquez probably should have won more of those than he did. I can't think of another one off the top of my head that jumps out. Like, he was definitely like, I can't think off the top of my head one that springs out, but I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's people listening to this and they're shouting at us.
Yeah.
But when you put under the pressure of a question, I don't know, you kind of just go blank, don't you?
Yeah. But I mean, that's my guess that they're going to try to run it back and do a rematch. Now Chris Colbert knows what exactly he's going to train for, or maybe, Garcia's going to get a title shot against Roger Gutierrez. WBA. He has the WBA world title, right?
Yeah, that'd be a good fight.
So, maybe they run it back. Maybe Showtime puts that on. I don't know. It depends.
I bet PBC had some options on him straight after that fight.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they do, especially if you're a late replacement. Like, hey, if you want the spot, you have to agree to this, So I'm sure regardless of what it is, he's going to either be a rematch with Colbert or he fights Gutierrez, but it's a Showtime card. I could see it. I could definitely see it. And then moving on, like you mentioned earlier, Fernando Martinez gets the upset over Jerwin Ancajas in a 12-round unanimous decision win. This was for the IBF Super Flyweight title. Was this a bigger upset than the main event?
No, I think we both said last week that Ancajas for a Super Flyweight, that was his 37th fight. That's a lot. A lot of those guys kind of, they come, they have a lot of fights, very, very, very young, but then they retire like in the early 30s. And Cajas has been he's just turned 30. He's held the IBF 115 belt since winning it in 2016.
That's ridiculous.
It really is. It really is. Making 9 defenses. Good fighter. I've always enjoyed watching him, to be honest with you. And obviously, he said that after this fight, he's going to move up because, making that was, getting too hard for him. So, it's good win for Martinez, though. Came in as a 4-1 underdog and, ripped the title away. I think it was 117, 111, 118, 110. So on both of these, there were upsets on both and they weren't, they were both one-sided.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what's crazy about it. Because, you see, when you talk about an upset, you think, oh, wow, okay, so that means it might have been a good fight or there was a knockout or, I think we rarely see, when we categorize it as an upset, we rarely see that it's a shutout decision win. It's just like, oh, okay, like it was an upset win, but like he literally shut him out the whole 12 rounds.
One thing I've always wondered, and this is a good question to pose today after these two. So is that classed as good matchmaking because the fights were close? Or is that classed as bad matchmaking because essentially the A side and the home fight is lost?
I think that's a question you have to pose to a matchmaker, like Golden Boy's Roberto Diaz, Top Ranks. Is it Carl Moretti? Is that their matchmaker?
Goodman.
Brad Goodman.
Uh-huh.
Who's Matchrooms? I don't even know.
I can't think who it is now. The other guy left, didn't he? And started up his agency.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank here, but I think that's a fair question to pose to a matchmaker like that, because it is. It's just like, okay, like obviously I would think that they would say, oh, well, I mean, our guy lost. So I think it depends on where you're at in the level of your career. If your fighter is like, okay, we're going to have to step it up. It's time. We've done enough fights. You have to step it up to somebody who's of your level or maybe a little bit more and show us what you got. Throw you in with the Wolves. I think if it's there and they still lose, okay, well, we got to that point where we had to put him in there with somebody like that. But if that fighter isn't at that level and they're still trying to get them to that level and build their career in order to get them to a world title shot or a more marquee opponent or event, then maybe it's bad matchmaking. So I think it depends on where they are in the pathway of their career. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it depends on what hat you wear, right? Like if you're a PBC matchmaker or a PBC guy, then the fact that Chris Colbert lost and Ancajas lost, that's bad matchmaking. But if you're the part of the away fans, if you're part of the B side, then that's good matchmaking because they've got it, they've won. You know that they're on to bigger and better paydays. So I think it just depends, doesn't it, where you sit. Like as fans, if Ancajas had knocked him out in the first round and Colbert had knocked the other guy out in the first round, we're like, well, that was crap matchmaking. Why did we pay to come and see this?
Right.
But the fact that it was, you know, the away fans, the underdogs both won as a fan, we're like, oh, hell yeah, that guy's unbelievable. And then you'll start following them and, you know, and you'll start watching them. So I think it depends really on like what hat you wear, you know, where you are.
No, yeah, exactly. So, you know, there's different angles how you can look at it, but we'll see. Rounding off that card, Gary Antoine Russell. I believe he's related to Gary Russell Jr., right?
Yeah.
That's why he probably uses the name Antoine so they can differentiate them. I didn't even know they were related until, you know, the last couple of weeks. I was like, oh, wow. He remains undefeated as he gets the TKO stoppage over Victor Postol. I know Victor Postol was getting a lot of attention too because obviously he's Ukrainian, and with the whole situation happening over there between the Ukraine and Russia at the moment, and I think his family was still over there, you know, trying to find safe passage. So, you know, it must have been tough for him to go through the fight and go through something like this while that's happening and his family's overseas like that. I think I don't agree with how they stopped it. I think Postol was losing the fight, but I don't agree at all with at the moment they stopped it. I think Postol still deserved to keep going. What do you think?
Terrible stoppage.
Yeah.
I know the judges had Russell winning anyway, 89-82 on 2 cards and then 88-83 on the third. But Postol doesn't really get stopped. And I don't think that he was taking, you know, that much punishment that the referee needed to jump in and stop it. He may have got stopped in another 30 seconds, you know, another minute maybe. But Postol's not really that sort of guy. Postol has never been stopped. You know, he hasn't been stopped by Terence Crawford, Josh Taylor, Jose Ramirez. So I don't think the referee needed to jump in and stop him for Gary Antoine Russell.
Yeah, that's the first thing that I thought of too. I was like, this guy was in the ring with Terence Crawford, Ramirez, like, and those guys didn't stop him. You know,
no, I don't know whether
get stopped by them.
Yeah, it's very odd. And then obviously now Gary Russell can say, "Well, I stopped him." You know, those guys didn't. Those guys essentially
they can use it for marketing. I mean, you know, that happens all the time. We've touched on that subject before.
Yeah,
you know, you fight somebody and like, oh well, so and so fought this guy, and you know, it took him 12 rounds to beat this guy for a decision, but I stopped him in 7. You know, I knocked him out in 7, so that makes me a better fighter. I mean, that's how people look at it, and they use that for marketing to help the boxer's career. But it works though. To the casual fan, that works.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good name to have on your ledger, though. Postol, he's only really been beaten by the best, you know, who we just named: Terence Crawford,
exactly.
Josh Taylor, Jose Ramirez, all world champions.
Exactly. So let's see. Let's see what happens where Gary Antoine Russell goes from here. You know, I'm interested to see how his career progresses following this win, whether we agree with the win or not. We agree that he should have won. He was on his way to winning, but I think Postol deserved to keep going. Where are we at? Also this past weekend from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, Vincent Astrolabio, I think I said that right, gets the unanimous decision win over 10 rounds against Guillermo Rigondeaux. I didn't even know he was fighting until I saw on Twitter that people were mentioning him. I was like, oh my God, where did he pop up? This is for the vacant WBC International Bantamweight title. Rigondeaux was down in round 8 during this fight. However old Rigondeaux is, he's not the same. He hasn't been the same since his loss to Lomachenko. He really hasn't. He's never been the same. You know, I think before that, especially when he fought Nonito Donaire all those years ago, he was dangerous. But I think when he fought Lomachenko, hasn't been the same since. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Losing to, a fight against an unknown fighter really in Dubai. I'm assuming that Rigondeaux went over there thinking he was going to get, a decent payday, pick up a WBC international trinket, and then come back to the US for some bigger fights. And it's all gone horribly wrong for him.
What else can you say?
Yeah, it's not, he didn't get stopped. I imagine that he'll probably pop up again on some PBC show like over here. But yeah, he's definitely changed. He's slowing down. He's never been the best to watch, but technically he's always been great. Hopefully he's got enough money to, run off into the sunset, and we don't have to, see him start getting beaten up because, he was not the best to watch, but
he's going to be the next Gamboa.
He was effective. Yeah, he was effective, and I hope that's the thing, dude. I hope that's not what we see, because we were just chatting about.
You never know.
Gamboa. We were talking about Linares. Now we're talking about Rigondeaux losing. Like, we've been watching these guys for the last 5-10 years, and they were kind of like a staple of some of the biggest fights that we've seen.
But they all have a name recognition, so like promoters are going to offer them fights. Like, hey,
yeah,
let's get one of them. They have a name recognition.
That's why you just got to hope that some of these guys have been sensible with the money, and they can do like a Lennox Lewis and Andre Ward, and kind of retire, like on top, or at least close to their peak, and we don't see them still, getting in the ring, far past their best, and then the people that are in 5-10 years, things are a joke, but we remember them as being, some of the better fighters that we've seen. So, fingers crossed those guys that we just mentioned, don't stay around too long.
Yeah, we will see. Also, this past Sunday, the 27th of February, from the O2 Arena in Greenwich, London, on DAZN, Lawrence Okolie remains undefeated as he gets a unanimous decision over 12 rounds over Michael Cesliak. I hope I said that right. This is for the WBA Cruiserweight title. Lawrence Okolie came out with a star-studded team. Israel Adesanya of the UFC and AJ Anthony Joshua. What did you think about Okolie's performance?
Not that great. He looked like he'd gone back to the Okolie of old. Very kind of negative, not that great to watch. Because of his last few fights, he looked like he'd kind of gotten rid of that like negative style, but very awkward, and really worked in his advantage. Because he'd kind of like mastered, like very simply, the 1-2. And, that was working for him. He's powerful, he's rangy, he's tall. And he was using all those to his ability to his improvement over the last few fights. But then he kind of went back a little bit on this one. It wasn't that great to watch. If he's going to become like a household name and, sell out arenas and stuff like that, I would say he needs to really go back to that other sort of style. Hopefully it was just for this one fight. Maybe he saw something in Cesliak that, thought made him choose to go back to that awkward style just so he could get the W. Just interested to see what happens next. Obviously, they had Bradis there hoping to try to sell that fight. And, I think if Bradis keeps messing around looking for that Jake Paul fight, we'll see Okolie probably move up to heavyweight. But then he kind of gives up a lot of his advantages there, doesn't he? Being so tall, being so rangy, because, as a heavyweight, they're all going to be like a similar size to him, but they're all going to be, just a lot thicker, a lot bigger. But look who the current reigning champion in the heavyweight division is. Usyk. He has most of the belts, and he's smaller. So we'll see. It may work to his advantage, being slightly, obviously being tall but being slim. Maybe he's just quicker than the rest.
Right.
And he can get that punch home quicker than everybody else, and that works to his advantage. So we'll see. We'll see.
We will see. Also on the card, Jordan Gill gets the 9th round knockout over Kareem. How do you say your last name?
I think it's Ghaffari.
I hope I said that right. This was for the EBU European Featherweight Champion. That's another new one I don't think I've ever seen. What do you think about Jordan Gill's performance?
Well, unbelievable fight because of the fact that Ghaffari was just battering him, absolutely battering him.
He didn't he give him a DDT?
Yeah, he pulled out some wrestling moves on him, DDT'd him. And then, obviously, I think it was for pretty much the last 2 rounds, Gill decided to go to his corner and was really just kind of like using the corner just to kind of like do like rope-a-dope on him. And then, he was just trying to find that, like one-hitter quitter. And then in the 9th, he found it, knocked him out. Referee pretty much stopped it straight away because he kind of fell stiff-legged. And for the last like 2 rounds, I think it was Andy Lee on commentary was saying, like throwing the towel, he's taking too much of a beating. And then Jordan Gill found that one shot and knocked him out. But that's managed to mask the fact that he was getting battered.
Right.
You know what I mean? At European level. And maybe Jordan, that was just another fight for Jordan Gill where he fought somebody whose style didn't mesh with his. I remember Jordan Gill turning pro and I loved his style. I was like, this guy's going to be a world champion. He's excellent. There's a lot of stuff well. But then now, like he had that one loss where he was, sick and stuff like that. And then, he managed to turn it around. But yeah, Ghaffari was just battering him. It wouldn't, if Calder would have thrown in the towel, I don't think anybody would have said anything. I think he went to his corner because he couldn't really stand up. He had 2 perforated eardrums. But for some reason, David Caldwell was letting him just stay in there. And he was, had a hematoma. And yeah, he didn't look good. And
then he kept then he Gil pretty much collapsed at the end because his legs gave out, or his leg gave out.
Yeah, he was celebrating in the corner, wasn't he? And his legs went, and he had to pretty much be held up by the ropes.
Yeah,
and then they sat him down. He got the W, but what did he lose? Like physically, mentally, how much did that take out of him? That old saying, there's only so many times that you can go to the well and get that little bit extra, and is that taking it out of him? And everybody, because of the way that it finished, it's kind of glossed over the poor performance that he had because he got that one punch which won it for him. But that was at European level. So what's he going to do at world level if he goes up against somebody?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. I mean, we'll see. But it was entertaining though, especially how he comes back. That was an awesome moment. It was a really awesome moment. Yeah, definitely. I think I agree with that. Moving on, fight previews. This upcoming Friday, the 4th of March, Fresno gets some fights again from the Save Mart Arena in Fresno, California on ESPN Plus. Jose Ramirez, 26-1, goes up against Jose Pedraza at a matchup at 140 pounds. What do you think about these two going at it?
Well, Pedraza's going to have to knock him out to get a draw.
Right. Since it's in Fresno. Yeah.
Since we saw...
It's like Taylor-Catterall in Scotland.
Zepeda, right? Remember when Zepeda dealt with Ramirez, and I think pretty much everybody thought that Ramirez lost, and they gave it to Ramirez. So it's going to be hard for him going up there. I think we both think Pedraza is really good to watch. He just blow a little bit hot and cold though, depending on the matchup.
That's the thing with him. He goes hot and cold. I think it's to the point where he's kind of been run through the well too many times now, and I'm not really expecting too much from them this weekend. I think Ramirez is just gonna take him out. I really do.
Really? Knockout?
I think I think that's just the gut feeling that I have. I really do. Because like you said, Pedraza is very hot and cold. He's very hot and cold. And it's I think it's to the point where it's just okay, well, I think the back and forth between those two temperatures, I guess, is over, and I think you're on the back nine of the cold side here.
I think it could be a good matchup though. Stylistically, I think it's.
I hope it's a good matchup, but I don't think it's going to be.
Yeah, I think it'll be good to watch, and we'll just have to see. See how much that loss to Josh Taylor took out of Ramirez. It's good in terms of a comeback fight, like a strong opponent though.
Oh yeah,
it's not a gimme.
On paper, it's a strong opponent, but like I said, is it going to be?
When the winner gets the Teofimo welcome to 140?
I would think so. Or Ramirez gets the shot against Teofimo for WBC when Taylor vacates.
I could see Teofimo coming back with either of those two or Arnold Barboza.
You know what? I honestly think Barboza, you put in Barboza in there with any person at 140, I think Barboza has a real shot at coming out on top above all these fighters. And I think people are sleeping on him.
Yeah, he has, because it's only been the last couple of years that he's actually started knocking people out, like when he fought, is it Mike Alvarado?
Yeah, so I think people are forgetting about Barboza. I think Barboza is the sleeping giant in that division.
If I'm correct, when I was in Vegas, that's who Jack Catterall will probably fight for the 140, because I think Jack Catterall was number 1 and I think Barboza was 2 because they were chatting when I was in Vegas with him. at the Taylor-Ramirez fight.
Right.
So, and I don't think much has changed since then. So I think Barboza and Catterall will probably fight for the vacant WBO.
That'd be a great matchup. Yeah, I would definitely look forward to that matchup. Also on the card, Joet Gonzalez makes his Top Rank debut ever since leaving Golden Boy Promotions, as he goes up against Joe Santissima.
Yeah, looks right.
I think so. I mean, I'm glad Joet Gonzalez landed on his feet. I don't know if he chose to leave Golden Boy when his contract expired, or Golden Boy didn't renew him. I know they put him in a couple fights to try to get world titles and get some significant wins, and he came up short, but he could still fight really well. He still has a lot of stock. Top Rank picked him up. I don't know how long this relationship is, how long this fight deals is, but he's a local kid here in Southern California, from the Glendora, California area. So good luck to him. Hopefully he keeps winning. He finds some new success under Top Rank. Also on this card from Stockton, California, Gabriel Flores Jr. returns after taking his first loss against Abraham Montoya. Do you think Flores is the real deal, or after his last fight, do you think it's the spark isn't there?
No, he's not the real deal. I don't think so. I never thought that, to be honest with you. He's too feather-fisted. Really was just given some really, really easy opponents to build him up to where he is. I actually think he might lose this as well, because he doesn't deal well with people that can punch, because he can't back him up. And Montoya is 20 wins, 14 by KO.
Man.
So, to be honest, Flores coming back into this fight, I honestly don't know if it was a good idea, because, like I just said, he doesn't do well with people that have any power. And by looking at Montoya's record, it doesn't bode well for him.
Right.
So I don't know whether Top Rank had kind of been like, hey, you've had enough time. Now you really need to show us what you're made of. Because I'm sure that Montoya is going to be going in there thinking because Top Rank do push Flores. When he was signed at 16 years old, he was at the youngest ever signing at the time, I believe.
So, yeah.
Yeah, they were doing all these different videos. He promotes himself very well on social media. So if I was Montoya, I'd be like, dude, I'm going to absolutely smoke this kid. I'm going to go in there and I'm just going to steal all the limelight from him.
Do you think if Montoya beats him, especially if it's a knockout or a stoppage, do you think Top Rank releases him?
Depending on the type of contract he's on, yeah. If he was signed,
that's true too. But
yeah.
Do you think
they're signed with a lot of fanfare? You might be earning some good money there. But 2 back-to-back losses, it's going to be hard for him, because sooner or later it's going to get round if people don't already know. He's got no power.
Right. Yeah.
You can only go so far with that, because someone like Leo Santa Cruz gets away with it because he throws so much.
Right.
Whereas Flores doesn't.
Right.
He's stuck in an amateur style.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And he's already at over 20 fights and still stuck in an amateur style.
Well, he sells because he's the same as Jose Ramirez, because he's Northern California.
Yeah, Stockton. There's not too many significant fighters from that area.
No, and he sells himself on social media well. So if you're a Top Rank, you'll be like, you know what? We've got Ramirez, we've got Flores.
Mark Castro's coming up there too, because he's from Fresno, I think, too.
Yeah, exactly. So he's just selling at the minute, which is kind of surprising why they've matched him like that. If I was the matchmaker, I'd be like, okay, let's get somebody that's got a good resume, but they're not that powerful. They're smaller than Flores.
I mean, he's got a significant number of fights already. That was his 20th, or 21st fight, the last one. And I think Top Rank was like, okay, he's over 20 fights already. We have to put him in there with somebody who is kind of going to move him a little bit, to test him, to try to level him up, because do we want to see Gilberto Ramirez at 50 fights and fighting the opposition he's been fighting?
It's not one of those again where you've got to look at it what side are you on? Are you just a fan, like us, where we just want to see the good fights, or are you a businessman on the other side where you're okay, we've kind of accepted Flores isn't going to become a world champion, so we just need to wring as much money out of him as we can up in Northern California, because we have Ramirez and Flores who are going to bring in fans and they're going to sell the stadiums out.
Exactly.
Which is personally what I would do, because I don't see it. I don't see it at all. He's not going to. I mean, he could become a world champion because there's so many, but he's not going to be,
what they think he's going to be.
World champion where he would dominate. Like he can't back people up.
Do you think he would be like Jesse Magdaleno? He was world champion for a little bit because they matched him up pretty good, but then when he faced I forgot who he fought, but he got smoked, and and they've tried to bring him back, and they tried to bring him back from that point. It never worked out. Like it just never worked out.
He was skillful though. I think Jesse Magdaleno's problem was just food.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Remember when he came back and we watched him?
Right. Yeah. No, you're right.
I mean, you both said like he looked good.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember
that Top Rank show at the LAFC stadium. He was there. He fought, and I think we both said like he was good. He looked skillful. He looked in shape. And he also turned down a big money offer, if I remember rightly. Was it Top Rank or somebody offered him a lot of money and he turned it down?
Right.
To come back and fight for them on a couple of fight deal. And he shot himself in the foot after that, because I think everyone else was like, all right, well, we're not offering you more money. And then he's just been kind of, thrown to the side. I think, he was his own worst enemy, in my opinion. He was skillful, but I think he just was kind of like a little bit lazy, because he would get like overweight. He'd come in looking very soft. But yeah, he had the skills.
Yeah. We'll see. I'm definitely looking forward to see how Flores does it. To see if he regains any type of hype here, especially coming after his first loss. This upcoming Saturday, a fight we will be covering live. So we should be able to be posting some content, hopefully get some interviews, some photos, some little videos on our social media accounts for the last round. This upcoming Saturday, the 5th of March on DAZN, Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, 50-3, goes up against Julio Cesar Martinez, who is a replacement for, is it Carlos Cuadras? Estrada, I'm sorry. Juan Francisco Estrada. And Julio Cesar Martinez is moving up in weight for this fight. You know what? The balls on that kid, Martinez, be like, okay, I'll take it. Martinez is essentially the best fighter at 112? And he's moving up to 115 to fight arguably the best fighter in that weight class, and maybe one of the best fighters of the last 10 years. I'm excited for this fight. I'm really looking forward to it. You got a Mexican fighter in Julio Cesar Martinez, who's the champion at 112 pounds, and you got Chocolatito Gonzalez, who's one of the best fighters, in history, and still one of the best fighters in his division. I mean, this is one of those where you see it on paper, you're like, okay, this has to deliver. This has to deliver. What do you think?
In terms of just the matchup on paper, unbelievable. Really looking forward to it. Can't wait to be there on Saturday, to be honest with you. Like you touched on, Gonzalez. We all thought a couple of fights ago that he was done. We thought that Father Time had come. Father Time's undefeated. But Roman Gonzalez, when he fought Yafai, managed to roll it back and, take the WBA title away from him. Obviously, then fought Estrada. Most people thought he won that, but he got, he lost on the scorecards that night to Estrada. And then obviously this was supposed to be the rematch. And obviously Martinez steps up. Martinez is just an absolute bull, a little warrior. Was it Eddie Hearn said that when he called Eddie Reynoso and, put it towards him, like, hey, does Martinez want to step in and fight Roman Gonzalez? His reply was, yes, my little crazy will be ready.
That's crazy. That's ridiculous.
That says something. So, yeah, should be a great matchup. Martinez is unbelievable to watch. Just, walks people down. Just goes in there and just really wants to have it out, full-on brawl. Where, Gonzalez is, a little bit different, throws punches in bunches, puts his combinations together so smoothly, just great to watch.
Who throws more punches, Leo Santa Cruz or Chocolatito Gonzalez?
I think in actual CompuBox stats, Gonzalez, I think.
Is it?
I think he has the record, right?
Probably.
I believe so. I think in terms of around that weight, I think him and was it Estrada got the most the other year together.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's great.
And it could have been more too. We don't even know. We're talking about the punching stats. It could have been more than that too.
Yeah, unbelievable. But yeah, can't wait to see it. I'm sure. Our friend of the show, Dougie Fisher, will hopefully be ringside there as well. He's a huge fan of Chocolatito.
Yeah.
And obviously, yeah, I'll get on. I went to his sparring. Was it last week or the week before?
Yeah, a couple weeks
down there. He had He had two different sparring partners in there. He had Daniel Chucky Barrera, who's turning pro on April 1st. He was in there, did 3 rounds, and then he had some guy over from Mexico who was short, stocky, covered in tattoos. Must have been several weight divisions above Chocolatito. He came in and did the 4th and 5th round together. And the guy the Chocolatito's corner team told the guy, like, hey, just don't hold back. And the guy absolutely tore into him. And I was looking at, Chucky and his coach, and I was saying, they do realize they have a fight in 2 weeks, right? Because the guy was just teeing off on him, and you could hear the punches, but he was so big and stocky that, he tired pretty quickly. And then Chocolatito soon went to work. But yeah, I think in terms, that was their version of Julio Cesar Martinez, because he's kind of short and stocky and just kind of comes forward. But this guy was
bigger than that.
Probably 5 times bigger than Martinez, because Martinez
that's ridiculous.
Is obviously a weight division below Chocolatito. So I don't know, maybe it was just to, like, if he can take the punches from this big guy, then he surely can take the punches from Martinez. But that was 2 weeks before the fight, so yeah, I was kind of surprised that they were going that hard. But hey,
as long as it doesn't get canceled before Saturday, that's hopefully, knock on wood. But obviously that's a card to look forward to. Those lower divisions are always very exciting to watch, and that's in the San Diego area at the Pachanga Casino. Actually, it's a little bit above San Diego in Temecula, California. Also in the card, Mauricio Lara goes up against Emilio Sanchez. Lara, obviously, his biggest win is against Warrington, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about this matchup, Lara versus Sanchez?
Should be a good fight. This, to be honest with you, this card actually does have a lot of good fights, but just a lot of big names. This will be good to see what Lara has, obviously, because he kind of just jumped onto the scene when he fought Warrington, going in there with a smaller opponent in Emilio Sanchez. We all know him from, he fights in this area quite a lot. I think Lara will walk through him. Sanchez isn't really that heavy-handed fighter. More of a boxer, to be honest with you. I think Lara will be too big, too powerful for him, and I think Lara will probably end up stopping him.
Yeah, that's a pretty big statement. I'm looking forward to see if you're right on that. Rounding off the card, Angel Fierro, 19-1-1, goes up against Juan Carlos Burgos. This is for the WBO NABO lightweight world title. And then news and notes as we round towards the finish line of this week's episode of The Last Round. Some situations been getting a lot of press since it happened on Twitter the last couple of days. Ryan Garcia responded to an Ellie Sekback video of Canelo. Canelo was telling ES News, essentially giving his actual feelings and opinion on Ryan Garcia, and even Andy Ruiz, mentioning that, kind of implying that Garcia wasn't disciplined, that Eddie has time for, kind of implying that Eddie Reynoso has time for fighters that are disciplined, that Ryan Garcia, there was one time or whatever that he showed up to the gym, trained for 20 minutes and then left, and then he didn't come back for like 4 days, and then he said, I'll be back to the gym tomorrow at 12, and then he showed up at 2. Canelo didn't hold back, and then right at the end of that video, I remember, or one of the videos, he started kind of saying the same thing about Andy Ruiz, and the video cut off. So I don't know if that's posted as well now, but
no.
I'm sure Ellie Sekback is waiting for that moment to post that video. But Canelo Alvarez not holding back. You could tell he was just like, I don't care anymore. I'm going to call these kids out. And then Ryan Garcia responded on Twitter. And then he pretty much said, like, Canelo knows the real reason why I left, but I'm going to keep it to myself. So pretty much saying like, oh, okay, so everything you said beforehand saying, oh yeah, Eddie Reynoso didn't have time for me, it just didn't work out. That's not the real reason. You pretty much just said, oh, you lied. And, there's another reason, which I mean, I think everybody kind of knew there was more stuff under the surface, especially everybody kind of knew that relationship was kind of breaking apart when Canelo made his opinion known a couple months ago in that complex.com article about Ryan Garcia. And look at what happened. Ryan Garcia goes with Joe Goosen. He's now training with him. They had their press conference this week in LA. Oh, and then, shout out to photographer Luis Mejia. He actually helped us out with some photographs at the Ryan Garcia Emmanuel to go kickoff press conference in downtown LA at the Golden Boy headquarters. We appreciate him. Check out his photos. We posted some on our Twitter and Instagram. Ryan Garcia actually retweeted one of them. I think it was a picture of him and To-Go posing right at the end of the press conference. But big shout out to Luis Mejia, a freelance photographer who covered that event for us and got some great shots. But I mean, what do you think? What's your take on that whole situation between Garcia and Canelo kind of going back and forth the last couple of days or so?
Not surprising. We live in Southern California and we've heard that since day one of Ryan Garcia. And that's why a lot of us who live in this area have said that, Ryan will never, succeed. Ryan will never get to the top of the sport because of all the things that we've heard, like different coaches, fighters in the amateur scene have all said the same thing about him, that, when the going gets tough, Ryan leaves. The amount of times he's done sparring and he starts to lose and he makes excuses like, oh, I don't feel well, my head guard doesn't fit properly, and he'll just get out the ring and disappear. And yeah, that's why one of the reasons that I think I've always been, slightly, not negative on him, but I've always been like, I don't think he's going to succeed because he just doesn't have that in him. It's a very hard, tough sport. And that's, one of the reasons I didn't think that he would beat, Luke Campbell, because he doesn't train properly. He doesn't take it properly. And when he's earning a lot of money from his social media, then he probably doesn't need to. He probably earns more money doing that than he does boxing. But, boxing probably feeds into that. If he stops boxing, then he may disappear, because you can't just post photos all the time and just, a lot of those social media stars, I imagine, disappear. I don't really follow them, but, I'm sure people just disappear off the face of the earth where, whilst he's doing boxing, he makes himself relevant. And that's why he always, so far, apart from Luke Campbell, he always picks, pretty much tailor-made opponents. Yeah, we've heard this for a long time, so this wasn't new to us that live in this area. In my opinion, I'm sure.
I hope, for as much criticism as the kid gets, and especially from us, especially from you, and from a lot of different parties all over the sport of boxing, and like you said, it's the stuff that we've heard internally from certain people in the Southern California scene. I hope he, especially now with Joe Goosen or whatever, that he finds that spark and he just starts beating everybody. Because I honestly think, and tell me if you agree with this or not, maybe you might not, but I honestly think if the kid can find that spark that he did with Luke Campbell, he had so much momentum off of that win, and fight all these bigger names, and he actually beats them, and he knocks them out, or he just starts winning. I think he could be easily the biggest star in the sport of boxing if he becomes the real deal. If he wins over hardcore boxing fans, he can become such a huge star. He already has a lot of stock, but he can become such a huge star because he's got like the influence of the Paul brothers and all these other influences. He's got that market kind of cornered essentially, but he's so polarizing. Obviously, a lot of fans, like, they want to see him lose. They want to see him fight good people. They're mad at him because he's a handsome kid and he posts all these videos and stuff like that, but then he doesn't fight, or this happens or that happens, and he takes a long layoff and whatever. He's so polarizing. He's so polarizing from different sections of the fandom that's in the sport of boxing. But if he actually can live up to some type of potential and actually start winning, and fighting these guys and actually winning, especially if like he knocks them out or something, I honestly believe he could be the biggest star in the sport, and he could rival a Canelo Alvarez. I mean, not right away, but because he's so polarizing, he has such a love-hate relationship with boxing fans. I wouldn't even say boxing fans, just fans in general, because he has a lot of casual fans, you know, a lot of teenage girls or, you know, younger girls or, you know, the social media age, Generation Z, essentially, who are huge fans of his. I think he can become the biggest star in the sport and cross over even more than he already has. What do you think? He's so polarizing, I'm telling you.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if he went on a tear and, you know, beat like Gervonta Davis, Jojo Diaz, Kambosos, Teofimo Lopez, all of those up-and-coming stars in and around his weight division, then yeah, I mean, I think you'll turn a lot of people's, you know, opinions around, because when you get in there as a fighter and you actually, you know, you put it on the line and you beat the best people in your weight division or in and around your weight division, because obviously everyone moves up and down now, then you can't say anything. You know, look at Canelo. You know, people didn't like him at first when he was coming up, but you can't say anything about it because he's fought everybody. So it'd be the same for Ryan, in my opinion. I think he would turn a lot of people that don't like him. You know, if he actually said, like, called these people out, then actually fought them instead of not fighting them all the time, or I'm going to fight Gervonta Davis next, and then he's fighting Emmanuel to go. Like, just stop saying that sort of stuff. You constantly say it, and you constantly fight somebody else, which is a lot of the comments that you see. You know, a lot of the comments are like, oh, are you actually going to show up to this fight? So, like, if he stops doing stuff like that, then I think a lot of people would change. You know, they'd be like, you know what, like, you are a good fighter, which was kind of the thing that happened to Canelo, because, you know, obviously a lot of the, you know, Mexican fans, Latino fans, you know, they turned against him when he dropped the title and wouldn't fight Triple G, because obviously there's that you know, machismo thing and that kind of culture, right? You know, you don't do that. There's a Mexican fighter, right? So a lot of people, you know, turned against him, but I think a lot of them have turned back now. You know, that he's fought Triple G twice and he's fought, you know, everybody, literally everybody. You can't not help, you know, not love and respect to the guy, you know, Canelo. And I think it would be similar for, you know, Ryan Garcia if he did the same thing.
No, yeah, I could see your point in that. But I still maintain, I'm telling you, he has such potential to be such a huge star. Because he's so polarizing. I mean, look at Mayweather, especially when Mayweather fought De La Hoya and got into the whole HBO 24/7. Obviously, Mayweather had the talent to back it up, but that persona that he created on HBO, those HBO 24/7s, where he was kind of like the villain, and then there's a lot of people who hated him, like, I hate him, and I just want to watch him to see him lose. There's a lot of people who tuned in who didn't like him, but they wanted to watch to see if this was the time that he was going to lose. I think Ryan Garcia, in a weird way, kind of has those same ingredients. Maybe not talent at this point, but he has that polarizing complex, essentially, where if he can reach that status, it's game over. Money-wise, like, he could be the biggest star. And, you know, he speaks English. So American media, like, and I'm talking about mainstream media, he's been on like the local morning news here in LA more than a few times. We have a local KTLA morning news that we have here in the city of Los Angeles. He's been on that morning show quite a few times. He's been on some other, you know, obviously some YouTube channels and, you know, the bigger influencers and stuff. But I'm telling you, man, you know, but it all comes back to the discipline. You know, is Canelo right? Obviously, this is like a he said situation. Is he right? Yeah. I think a realistic person, a logical person would think, yeah, Canelo's right. You know, if you kind of look at their experiences up until this point in life, how Canelo is, how he's fighting all these guys, he's building a legacy. You know, he trains hard, he's disciplined. It shows in the ring, like it shows based on his work product. Then yeah, Canelo has a lot more credibility, and he's likely right.
I bet it's one of those things where, because Ryan said that, like Eddie wasn't there in the gym and wouldn't give him the time. But I bet it was one of those things like a fatherish thing where Eddie's like, if you're late, I'm leaving. I'm teaching you discipline. I'm teaching you to be on time. And I bet Ryan's done that sort of thing where he's doing something else. He's doing some social media thing, or maybe he's just not, a punctual guy. I have no idea. And he's late. And Eddie's been like, I'm going home.
Right.
I'm not, my whole life doesn't revolve around you. Like you have to be on time to get trained. Right.
Yeah, it's true. It is. And like I said, Canelo also called out Andy Ruiz right at the end of that video. We didn't get to hear the whole part, but I guess Andy Ruiz also has an issue with some discipline, some dedication in training. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's see if Andy Ruiz is the next to leave Reynoso. Maybe this is Canelo's way of saying, "Hey, man, you got to go too. You're bringing the gym down, and that's not how we work here." So,
well, if you've got, say, I don't know how many fighters he has at the minute, and it's like, okay, we've got Luis Nery at 9 o'clock, we've got Ryan at 10 o'clock, we've got Frank Sanchez at this time, so and so at this time, Canelo at this time. People can't be late because it goes into the next session.
Right. Exactly.
So, like, that's the thing that people have to understand is you need to be on time, and maybe that's the reason that like Nery's gone, Ryan Garcia's gone, Andy Ruiz might leave. And those people are all the people that don't have discipline. And we know that from, outside of the ring, like Nery missing weight, Andy Ruiz, coming in like a slob for the Anthony Joshua rematch, Ryan just being Ryan, I don't blame Eddie for it. Right.
No, yeah, you're right. I agree with that. We'll see. And in terms of Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy, I'm sure they love this, that there's that Ryan Garcia left Canelo, because obviously Canelo and Golden Boy separated, so they're not on good terms anymore. And then they had Ryan, their biggest star, essentially training with the guy who just left them and who's the biggest star in the world in boxing. And now there's a rift between those two. So I'm sure De La Hoya is like, oh, okay, he's back on our side. So I'm sure they love it because that gives them a little bit more trust in that relationship. But we will see. Also this week, Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte had their kickoff press conference. Dillian Whyte did not show up. He's been getting a lot of criticism for that. I told you off air just before we started that I think it's very strategic. I mean, people say he's upset because he's not getting paid, what he feels that it's justified, even though he's getting paid, still like $7-8 million, which is still a crazy amount of money. But I think it's also strategic. I feel like they're talking about Dillian Whyte a lot more because he didn't show up to the press conference than they would if the press conference happened. I feel like the publicity is a lot more serious and a lot more not passionate, I guess. Am I wrong? What do you think?
We could only obviously guess, but I would imagine, obviously watching kind of how Dillian Whyte is it sounds like it wasn't in the contract that he has to turn up, and he's thought to himself, well, I'm in training camp in Portugal. Do I really want to be flying back and forth to the United Kingdom to promote the fight? If he was going to be professional like everyone else did, then yes, he should, because the fight's, still some time away. But then he may also be thinking, what, like Tyson Fury is very quick-witted. Do I really want to get into a battle of words with him, which will obviously happen. And, Dillian Whyte will probably lose his temper. And then, will the table go flying like the kind of Chisora days, which would be good in terms of promotion. But, we've seen this happen in MMA. I was saying to Danny before the show, before we started recording, we've had, I think it was Ronda Rousey and also Conor McGregor have both said that, when they became huge, that all of the media stuff, affected their fight performances, because before fights, they were having to do so much media, so many interviews that, that was taking time away from the gym. And this is the biggest fight in Dillian Whyte's career. Right. So maybe he's thinking to himself, he's like, what? I don't need any distractions. I don't need anything that's going to, come between me and my time in the gym. I don't have to turn up. It's not contractually, in it for me to go and do all this media. So I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. I think, I think like you said, or you mentioned off air for sure, that it was a combination of him being upset about the money that he's making, that he feels he deserves a bigger piece of the pie, and it's also strategic. I mean, because he hasn't said anything. He hasn't said anything on social media. Huh. He hasn't said anything, which I also. That's why that's what lends credibility to me to the strategy behind it. I think he's doing it on purpose. He's like, oh yeah, they're gonna talk about me more because I didn't show up. You know, he signed the contract reportedly on the last day of the deadline, and then he doesn't show up for this kickoff press conference. I mean, you don't think, you know, I think it's a whole strategy. I think he is upset to an extent that he's not getting paid more, but it's a strategy. He's getting people to talk and calling him unprofessional. He didn't show up and stuff like that. Was it written into the contract for him to show up and do press for the fight? Maybe, maybe not. If it was, they're obviously going to fine him, or something's going to happen, or maybe it wasn't. I'm tending to believe that it wasn't in the contract, and he's like, okay, well, it doesn't matter if I show up or not. You know, I mean, we'll see. But people are talking about it. We're talking about it right now, and I've seen other people write a bunch of stories calling him unprofessional. He didn't show up. Bob Arum said some quotes. Frank Warren said some quotes. They're talking about it. He's, like I said, I think he's getting more publicity and more attention on this event than if he actually showed up, because everybody knows what they're going to get with Tyson Fury, and they know Dillian Whyte talks back too. But it's like, oh, okay, well, we expected these from these two. We know what we're going to get, so this was expected. People didn't expect this. They're like, oh my God, this is ridiculous, unprofessional. He didn't show up. I can't believe he didn't show up. He's getting paid $8 million. It's a strategy. I fully believe it's more of a strategy than it is a money issue. Marketing 101. What do they call it in professional wrestling? A work. You know, he's working the people. He is working the people. But once again, we appreciate you guys listening to this week's episode. As we mentioned earlier in the show, we will be bringing you some content throughout this week. Earlier this week, we brought you some content from the Ryan Garcia press conference. Photographer Luis Mejia went to the press conference and got some photographs for us. You can check those out on our Twitter handle and Instagram. We appreciate him for getting us those shots. Check him out as well on Twitter at El Mejia Photography, or El Mejia Photos. I'm sorry. Check him out. He's got some good shots. He's taken some great shots for like PBC, TGB, Ringstar. You know, he's been their official photographer for quite a few events here in the Southern California area, which has been great. Like I said, we're going to the DAZN card this weekend in San Diego. Chocolatito Gonzalez, Julio Cesar Martinez. So we'll try to get you as much content as we can from there. And the Canelo Dimitri Bivol press conference is also this week in San Diego. We are planning to attend that and hopefully get you some content. But as we round through the finish line here on this week's episode, Mike, go ahead and let our fans and followers know where they can find us and follow us.
We're at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter, and be sure to join us next week, where we'll be giving you all the content we got from Chocolatito Martinez, and looking forward to the big DAZN card. Lee Wood defending his WBA featherweight title against Michael Conlan.
So once again, from my co-host Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.